It all starts when a powerful CEO breaks down in a crowded airport and a quiet, battle-tested single dad steps in. In one moment, his steady hands pull her back from the edge. But what seems like a chance encounter sparks something bigger because this woman isn't just fighting trauma. She's fighting to keep her entire career from collapsing. A photo of her breakdown leaks. A smear campaign explodes. Whispers spread through the town, and a ruthless enemy is ready to take her down. Only this widowed father, with scars of his own, can help her stand again. But standing beside him could cost her everything, and even put his family at risk. When the world calls her broken, and his past is dragged into the light, can these two wounded souls find healing in each other's arms? Or will the weight of their secrets tear them apart? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the small Maple Ridge Airport, its modest terminal building adorned with faded welcome banners and local artwork. Evelyn Hart straightened her navy blazer as she descended the steps from her private jet, her heels clicking purposefully against the metal. This was supposed to be a quiet site inspection. No press, no fanfare, just a practical assessment of the proposed location for Hartworks' new manufacturing plant. A gentle breeze carried the sweet scent of newly cut grass and the distant aroma of food trucks preparing for the county fair. Evelyn allowed herself a small smile. The simplicity of small-town life had its appeal, even to someone who spent most of her time in gleaming corporate towers. "Ms. Hart?" A young airport staff member approached with a tablet. "Your car will be here in just a few minutes. Would you like to wait inside?" "That's fine, thank you." Evelyn appreciated the crisp autumn air after hours in pressurized cabins. She took in her surroundings, noting the careful maintenance of the grounds. Despite the airport's modest size, it spoke well of the community's pride, a factor she always considered in site selections. Without warning, a sharp crack split the air, then another, and another. Evelyn's world tilted sideways. The peaceful airport scene shattered, replaced by fragments of a different night, breaking glass, loud reports, shadows moving through her home. Her throat closed up. Her designer briefcase slipped from suddenly numb fingers. "Ma'am?" The staff member's voice seemed to come from very far away. "It's just the fair testing their fireworks system." But Evelyn couldn't process the words. Her heart hammered against her ribs as past and present collided. She stumbled backward, trying to find something solid to brace against. Her vision tunneled, dark spots dancing at the edges. "Hey there." A new voice, steady and warm like sunlight on stone. "I've got you. Let's breathe together." Strong hands gently gripped her shoulders, providing an anchor point to reality. Evelyn found herself looking into kind eyes the color of warm coffee. The man's face was weathered but gentle, crow's feet crinkling at the corners as he held her gaze. "In through your nose," he instructed softly. "Count with me. 1, 2, 3, 4. Something in his calm authority cut through the panic. Evelyn forced herself to follow his lead, drawing air in slowly. "Now out through your mouth. 4, 3, 2, 1. They repeated the cycle several times. Gradually, the world stopped spinning. The present moment reasserted itself. The airport, the autumn air, the solid presence of the stranger keeping her steady. "There you go," he murmured. "You're safe. Ground yourself. Feel your feet on the concrete. Listen to the wind in the trees." Evelyn became aware that she had practically collapsed against him, his arms supporting most of her weight. She should have felt mortified. She who prided herself on perfect composure, but something about his matter-of-fact kindness made it feel almost natural. "Thank you," she managed, her voice still shaky. "I'm so sorry, I don't usually." "No apologies needed." He helped her straighten up, ensuring she was stable before letting go. "I'm Caleb Brooks, former Army medic. I've seen plenty of strong people have moments like this." Another crack from the fairgrounds made her flinch, but less violently this time. Caleb's hand returned to her shoulder, grounding her. "They'll be done testing soon," he said. "Want to move inside until then?" Evelyn nodded, grateful for the suggestion. As Caleb guided her toward the terminal, neither of them noticed the older woman with her phone raised, capturing the moment when the distinguished CEO found unexpected shelter in a small-town veteran's arms. Inside the quiet terminal, Evelyn took the bottle of water Caleb offered from a nearby vending machine. Her hands had almost stopped shaking. "I'm Evelyn Hart, she said, feeling she owed him at least that much. "I appreciate your help, Mr. Brooks. You seem very practiced at this. Caleb, please?" He settled into the plastic chair next to her, maintaining a respectful distance while still offering a steady presence. "And yes, well, you pick up a few things in the service. Plus, I volunteer with the veterans group at church. Sometimes the skills come in handy." Another boom from outside, more muffled now. Evelyn tensed, but the breathing pattern Caleb had taught her helped her ride it out. "I should go," she said, spotting her driver through the terminal windows. "I have meetings." "Of course." Caleb stood, offering her a hand up more out of courtesy than necessity. "Take care of yourself, Miss Hart." "Evelyn," she corrected, surprising herself. Their eyes met one final time, and something passed between them. Recognition, perhaps, of kindred spirits who understood what it meant to carry invisible wounds. "Thank you again, Caleb," she said softly, before gathering her dignity around her like armor and walking toward her waiting car. Neither could have guessed that their brief encounter, captured in a stranger's photo, would soon send ripples through both their carefully ordered lives. For now, it was just a moment of unexpected grace in an autumn afternoon, a steady hand offered when it was needed most. Tasha Reed burst into Evelyn's hotel suite, her phone clutched tightly in her hand. Her usual composed demeanor was replaced with barely contained anxiety as she found her boss methodically unpacking her suitcase. "We have a situation," Tasha announced, holding up her phone. "Someone at the airport caught your moment with the mystery man. It hasn't gone viral yet, but it's already making rounds in local Facebook groups." Evelyn's hands stilled over her neatly folded clothes. "Show me." Tasha handed over the phone. The photo showed Evelyn and Caleb's steady embrace, her usually commanding presence diminished, vulnerability evident in her expression. Her heart sank. "Delete it," Evelyn said flatly, returning the phone. "It's not that simple," Tasha replied, perching on the edge of the hotel bed. "We can't control every copy out there, but I think I have a solution." She paused, watching Evelyn's reaction carefully. "I did some digging. The man is Caleb Brooks, retired Army medic, clean record, respected in the community. He's exactly what we need right now." Evelyn raised an eyebrow. "Need for what?" "A driver, a local guide." Tasha's voice softened. "Someone who understands and can help if something happens again." "Absolutely not." Evelyn turned back to her unpacking, her movements sharp and precise. "I don't need a babysitter. You need someone who knows this town and its people. Someone discreet. And after today's episode," "It wasn't an episode," Evelyn cut in, her voice tight. "It was a momentary lapse." "Fine. But what happens if there's another momentary lapse during the plant inspection? Or the town hall meeting?" Tasha stood, stepping closer. "Evelyn, you know what's at stake here. The board is watching your every move." Evelyn's shoulders tensed. She knew Tasha was right. She couldn't risk another public incident. Not with Clayton Pierce looking for any excuse to question her leadership. "Fine," she conceded. "Make the arrangements." Tasha was already dialing before Evelyn finished speaking. After a brief conversation, she hung up with a satisfied smile. "He'll be here in an hour." Apparently, his daughter needs funding for a school choir trip, so our offer was persuasive. Caleb Brooks sat in his worn pickup truck outside the Grand Mason Hotel, the fanciest establishment in Maple Ridge, though that wasn't saying much. He adjusted his collar, feeling out of place in his best button-down shirt. The extra money would help with Naomi's choir trip, he reminded himself. That's what mattered. His phone buzzed. A text from Naomi. "Break a leg, Dad." "Gotta go." He smiled, typing back a quick response before stepping out into the cooling evening air. The hotel lobby was quiet when Evelyn emerged from the elevator. She wore a different suit than earlier, but her composure was fully restored, as if the airport incident had never happened. "Mr. Brooks," she said formally, extending her hand. "Thank you for agreeing to this arrangement." "Caleb is fine," he replied, his handshake firm but gentle. "My car's just outside. Nothing fancy, but it's reliable." "It'll do." Her tone was clipped, professional. As they walked to the truck, Caleb noticed her scanning the surroundings, shoulders tense. He recognized the hypervigilance. He'd seen it countless times in fellow veterans. "The county fair setup is happening this week," he said casually as he opened her door. "They'll probably be testing equipment again. If you'd like, I can take alternate routes to avoid the fairgrounds. Evelyn paused, one hand on the doorframe. For a moment, her carefully maintained facade cracked, revealing a flicker of relief. That would be appreciated. Once they were both settled in the truck, Caleb turned to her. Ms. Hart, I want you to know that I understand discretion. Whatever happens during my time as your driver stays between us. Thank you, she said quietly, still looking straight ahead. And it's Evelyn. She took a deep breath, then added, I assume Ms. Reed explained the requirements? She did. I know the signs to watch for, and I know what helps. Military training never really leaves you. He started the engine, carefully pulling away from the curb. Just let me know what you need, and I'll adjust accordingly. Evelyn's posture relaxed slightly. Not much, but enough to be noticeable. They drove in comfortable silence, Caleb taking the long way around to avoid the fairgrounds. As they approached her first meeting of the evening, she spoke again. The breathing technique you used at the airport, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Would you teach me that? Caleb pulled into a parking spot, turning off the engine. Of course. It's simple, really. Let me show you. They spent the next few minutes going through the grounding exercise, Caleb's steady voice guiding her through each step. When they finished, some of the brittleness had left Evelyn's demeanor. Ready? Caleb asked, reaching for his door handle. Evelyn nodded, straightening her jacket. Yes, and thank you. Morning sunlight painted stripes across the hotel parking lot as Caleb waited beside his well-maintained silver SUV. He checked his watch again. 7:55 a.m. 5 minutes early was on time in the Army, and old habits died hard. Evelyn emerged from the hotel's revolving door precisely at 8 a.m., her navy pantsuit, crisp and her shoulder-length hair perfectly styled, if not for the slight darkness under her eyes, carefully concealed with makeup. No one would guess she'd had such a rough day yesterday. Good morning, Miss Hart, Caleb said, opening the passenger door. Good morning, Mr. Brooks. Her voice was measured, professional. She slid into the seat with practiced grace, setting her leather portfolio on her lap. As Caleb pulled out of the parking lot, he glanced at his passenger. Her hands were clasped tightly in her lap, knuckles white. The distribution center is about 20 minutes away, he said softly. Would you like me to tell you what to expect? Evelyn's shoulders relaxed slightly. Please. There'll be forklifts moving inventory, loading docks with trucks backing in and out. Typical warehouse sounds. He kept his tone matter-of-fact, neither dismissing nor amplifying the potential triggers. If anything gets overwhelming, we can use a simple grounding technique. Would you like to learn it now, while things are quiet? She nodded, her expression guarded but willing. It's called the 5-4-3-2-1 method. You name 5 things you can see, 4 you can touch, 3 you can hear, 2 you can smell, and 1 you can taste. He demonstrated. Like right now, I see the road, that red maple tree, the gas station sign, those morning glory flowers, and that jogger with the golden retriever. A ghost of a smile touched Evelyn's lips. That's surprisingly straightforward. The best tools usually are. The distribution center loomed ahead, a vast concrete building with loading bays lining one side. As they approached, the rumble of idling trucks and beeping of reversing forklifts filled the air. Evelyn's breathing quickened. 5 things, Caleb prompted gently. The building, the blue company sign, those stacked pallets, the security booth, the flowering bushes by the entrance. Her voice steadied with each observation. Good. 4 things you can touch. My portfolio, the leather seat, my pearl necklace, the air conditioning on my skin. By the time they'd parked, Evelyn's breathing had returned to normal. She turned to Caleb, something vulnerable in her dark eyes. Thank you. The tour proceeded smoothly. Caleb stayed a respectful distance behind as Evelyn spoke with the facility manager, asked detailed questions about workflow efficiency, and examined inventory tracking systems. When a forklift dropped a pallet with a loud bang, she flinched but quickly recovered, discreetly counting things she could see. After 2 hours, they headed to Maple Ridge High School, where Naomi's choir was rehearsing for the upcoming county fair. The school's ancient air conditioning hummed as they slipped into the auditorium. On stage, 20 teenagers, including Naomi in a purple t-shirt, were working through a contemporary arrangement of Bridge Over Troubled Water. Naomi spotted them and waved enthusiastically between verses. Evelyn found herself waving back, charmed by the girl's natural warmth. During a break, Naomi bounded down to greet them. "Dad, Miss Hart, what did you think?" "Beautiful harmony on the bridge section," Evelyn said, surprising herself with how easily the praise came. "Really? That's the part we've been struggling with most." Naomi beamed. "Hey, are you coming to the fair performance next week? We're doing this awesome mashup with—" "Naomi," Caleb interrupted gently. "Ms. Hart has a busy schedule." "Oh, right, sorry." Naomi's smile didn't dim. "Well, if you can make it, we'd love to have you there." Something in Evelyn's chest loosened at the simple, genuine invitation. She found herself chuckling. "I'll check my calendar." The drive back to the hotel was quiet, but comfortably so. The afternoon sun warmed the car, and the gentle motion had a lulling effect. Evelyn watched the small-town scenery drift past the diner with its neon open sign, the library with its brick facade, the park where elderly men played chess under maple trees. She realized, with a start, that she hadn't checked her phone once since leaving the distribution center, hadn't been mentally cataloging escape routes or scanning for threats, hadn't felt the familiar tension humming under her skin. She felt normal. The thought was so overwhelming that tears pricked at her eyes. She blinked them back, not wanting Caleb to notice, but the peace remained. The warm car, the quiet presence beside her, the lingering echo of young voices raised in song, it all combined into a cocoon of safety she hadn't experienced in months. Her eyes grew heavy. She tried to fight it at first. CEOs didn't fall asleep in cars like children, but exhaustion won out. Her head tilted against the window as her breathing deepened into the rhythm of sleep. Caleb glanced over, noting her relaxed features and the way her usually rigid posture had softened. He turned down the radio another notch and kept driving, careful to take the curves gently so as not to wake her. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the Brooks' front porch as Evelyn sat in a weathered wooden rocking chair. The modest one-story home, with its faded blue paint and cheerful flower boxes, felt worlds away from her penthouse apartment in the city. Naomi pushed open the screen door, carefully balancing a tray with 3 glasses of lemonade. Her dark curls bounced as she concentrated on not spilling. "I added extra ice to yours, Miss Hart," Naomi said, offering Evelyn a glass decorated with painted daisies. "Dad mentioned you like your drinks really cold." "That's very thoughtful of you, Naomi. Thank you." Evelyn took a sip, pleasantly surprised by the perfect balance of sweet and tart. "Did you make this yourself?" "It's Mom's recipe," Naomi said softly, settling onto the porch swing. "Dad and I make it every summer." Caleb emerged from inside, accepting his glass from his daughter with a gentle smile. He leaned against the porch railing, his posture relaxed but alert, ever the protector. "The garden where we grow the lemons was her project," he explained. "Naomi's kept it going these past few years." "You have quite the green thumb then," Evelyn said, watching how Naomi's face lit up at the compliment. "Actually," Naomi fidgeted with her glass, glancing at her father before continuing. "I wanted to tell you something, Miss Hart. I recognized your name when Dad mentioned who he was working with. 2 years ago, I applied for the Young Women in STEM Scholarship Program, the one funded by the Hart Foundation." Evelyn's breath caught slightly. The scholarship program had been her pet project, one she'd insisted on funding anonymously. "Oh?" "I made it to the final round," Naomi continued. "I didn't win, but being a finalist helped me get into the advanced science track at school. And the mentoring program that came with it? That's how I got interested in environmental engineering." Caleb straightened, looking between his daughter and Evelyn with newfound understanding. "That program changed her whole direction. She's already talking about college engineering programs. The interview panel said my project on sustainable urban gardens was really promising," Naomi added, her eyes bright with remembered pride. "Even though I didn't get the main scholarship, they gave me a grant to expand my research. I've been working with our school's science department ever since." Evelyn set her lemonade down carefully, her throat tight with unexpected emotion. She'd fought hard to establish that scholarship program, pushing back against board members who thought it was a waste of resources. To see the real impact, sitting right here on this porch, "I'm so glad it made a difference," she said softly. "That's exactly what we hoped for, to open doors for young women like you." "Did you have anyone helping you when you were my age?" Naomi asked. "Someone who believed in you?" Evelyn's fingers traced the condensation on her glass. "No," she admitted. "That's why the scholarship program matters so much to me. I wanted to create the support system I wish I'd had." "Well, you did," Naomi said firmly. "There are 30 girls in my science club now. We're working on a vertical farming project for the cafeteria, and 3 of us are applying for engineering scholarships this year." "Naomi's been a real leader," Caleb added proudly. "The younger girls look up to her. Just like someone looked out for me," Naomi said, giving Evelyn a shy smile. "Even if I didn't know it was you at the time." The simple sincerity in her voice wrapped around Evelyn's heart like a warm blanket. She'd spent so many years building walls, protecting herself from the harsh corporate world. But here, on this humble porch, those walls felt unnecessary. "Would you like to see my garden?" Naomi asked hopefully. "The lemons are almost ready for another harvest." "I'd love that," Evelyn replied, surprised to find she truly meant it. They had just stood up when the screen door banged open. Tasha burst onto the porch, her usual professional composure notably ruffled. "Evelyn, we have a situation," she said, holding out her tablet. "The airport photo just went viral." Evelyn's hand trembled slightly as she took the device. There it was, the moment Caleb had steadied her during her panic attack, captured for all to see. But it was the caption that made her blood run cold. "CEO falls apart in flyover country. Is Heartworks leader unfit to run the company?" The lemonade glass slipped from her other hand, shattering on the wooden porch floor. "Ms. N. Hart!" Naomi exclaimed, jumping up. Caleb moved swiftly, carefully guiding Evelyn back to the rocking chair while keeping both of them clear of the broken glass. "Easy now. Deep breaths, just like we practiced." But Evelyn could only stare at the cruel words beneath the photo, her carefully constructed world beginning to crack like the glass at her feet. Morning sunlight filtered through the hotel room's heavy curtains as Evelyn sat rigidly at the desk, her tablet displaying headline after headline. Her hands trembled slightly as she scrolled through the growing collection of think pieces and expert analyses, questioning her mental fitness to lead Heartworks. "CEO has public meltdown in flyover country," read one particularly cruel headline. The comments beneath were even worse. A gentle knock at the door made her jump. "Ms. Hart, it's Caleb. Come in," she called, quickly straightening her blazer and smoothing her expression. Caleb entered, carrying 2 paper cups of coffee. His calm presence seemed to instantly make the room feel less suffocating. He placed 1 cup beside her tablet, the rich aroma of quality dark roast filling the air. "I noticed you prefer the local roaster's blend," he said quietly, taking a seat in the adjacent chair when she gestured for him to join her. "Thank you." Evelyn wrapped her hands around the warm cup, trying to still their shaking. "Have you seen the news?" "I have." His voice was steady, matter of fact. "And I've seen plenty of false narratives in my time, Miss Hart. Truth has a way of standing up." She met his eyes, finding nothing but sincere conviction there. "I wish I shared your confidence. 25 years building this company, and they're ready to tear it all down over one moment of—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "Human response to trauma," Caleb completed firmly. "Nothing more, nothing less." Evelyn took a careful sip of coffee, letting its warmth center her. "The community meet and greet is in an hour. I can't show any weakness." "Being human isn't weakness," Caleb said softly, but he nodded, understanding. "I'll be right there if you need me." The local community center was already buzzing when they arrived. Tables laden with home-baked goods and coffee urns created a homey atmosphere, but Evelyn felt the shift in energy as she entered. Conversations dimmed, heads turned, whispers started. She held her spine straight, summoning every ounce of corporate poise as she made her way through the crowd. Many greeted her warmly, especially those she'd met during the warehouse tour, but others hung back, their expressions ranging from concerned to openly suspicious. Saw the video myself. A woman's voice carried from nearby. "Complete breakdown. Is that really who we want running things?" "My cousin works in corporate," another voice added. "Says she's always been unstable." Evelyn's steps faltered slightly, but she forced herself to keep moving, to keep smiling. She was reaching for a coffee cup when her hand knocked against the urn, making it rattle loudly against the metal table. The whispers grew louder. Someone snickered. "Careful there, Miss Hart," a man called out with false concern. "Wouldn't want another episode." Before Evelyn could respond, Caleb's voice cut through the murmurs, calm but carrying. You know, when I came back from my third tour, loud noises weren't easy for me either. The room grew quiet. Caleb stepped forward, his presence commanding respect without demanding it. That's not weakness. It's a normal response to abnormal circumstances. Ms. Hart didn't just survive a traumatic experience. She got back up and kept leading, kept working to bring opportunities to communities like ours. That's not instability. That's courage. Several veterans in the crowd nodded firmly. Mrs. Anderson, who ran the local diner, started applauding. Others joined in, drowning out the earlier whispers. Evelyn felt warmth spread through her chest, not from embarrassment, but from something deeper, gratitude perhaps, or hope. The rest of the meet and greet went smoothly, with more people coming forward to share their own stories of resilience. Even some initial skeptics seemed to soften after speaking with her about Heartworks' plans for the community. It was nearly midnight when Evelyn's phone rang in her hotel room. She recognized the number immediately. Heartworks' corporate office. Evelyn. Clayton Pierce's voice oozed false concern. "I've been trying to reach you all day. I was meeting with the community, Clayton. You know, doing my job? About that." He paused meaningfully. "The board has concerns about recent events. I'll be calling for a vote of no confidence at next month's meeting." Evelyn's fingers tightened around the phone. 4 weeks from now? Right when Maple Ridge needs final approval? Convenient timing, isn't it? She could hear the smile in his voice. "Sleep well, Evelyn." The line went dead, leaving her alone with the quiet hum of the air conditioning and the weight of what was to come. Evelyn paced the hotel room, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. The morning headline swirled in her mind like a toxic cloud. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from the board. She couldn't bear to look. "I should just cancel the whole project," she said, her voice tight with tension. "Move operations somewhere else. Somewhere bigger, where people won't." "Won't what?" Caleb asked quietly from where he stood by the window. His steady presence anchored the chaotic energy of the room. "Won't see me as damaged goods." The words came out bitter and sharp. Evelyn stopped pacing and pressed her fingertips to her temples. This town was supposed to be perfect, small enough to control the narrative, far enough from major media. And now you're thinking of running. There was no judgment in Caleb's voice, just calm observation. "It's not running," Evelyn snapped. "It's a strategic withdrawal. The board is already questioning my judgment. If I pull out now, I can spin it as a business decision. If you leave now, you let them write your story." Caleb's words were soft but firm. "Is that really what you want?" Evelyn turned to face him, ready to argue, but something in his steady gaze made her pause. "What do you mean?" "Right now there's a narrative being written about you, about who you are, what you can handle." He took a step closer, hands in his pockets. "But that story, it doesn't have to be the only one. And what's the alternative? Stay here and let everyone watch me struggle?" The vulnerability in her voice surprised even her. "Stay here and let them see you lead. With strength and dignity. And yes, with challenges too." Caleb's eyes held a warmth that made her chest tighten. "This town understands struggle, Miss Hart. What it doesn't understand is giving up." Evelyn sank into the desk chair, her shoulders dropping slightly. She paused, the words foreign on her tongue. "I need help." "I know," Caleb nodded. "That's why I'm here." "Would you?" Evelyn straightened, switching to her business voice. "Would you consider a more formal arrangement? As my escort for the duration of my stay? The board meeting is in 4 weeks, and I need someone who understands." Caleb finished for her. "Yes, I would. The town will talk," she warned. "The town already talks." A slight smile crossed his face. "Small towns always do." Evelyn pulled out her tablet, fingers flying across the screen. "I'll have Tasha draw up a contract. Full confidentiality, of course. The compensation will be—" "Miss Hart," Caleb interrupted gently. "I'm not doing this for the money." She looked up, surprised. "Then why?" "Because everyone deserves a chance to stand their ground, to face what scares them and come out stronger." His voice carried the weight of experience, and sometimes they just need someone steady beside them while they do it. An hour later, they pulled up to the Brooks' modest home. The smell of pot roast wafted from the kitchen, and Naomi's voice carried from inside, humming a hymn while she set the table. "Would you join us for dinner?" Caleb asked, turning off the engine. It's nothing fancy, but I shouldn't, Evelyn started. But Naomi appeared on the porch, waving enthusiastically. Please stay, Ms. Hart. The girl's genuine smile was hard to resist. Dad's pot roast is actually edible, I promise. High praise indeed, Caleb chuckled, opening Evelyn's door. Inside, the house was warm and lived in. Family photos lined the walls, and a well-worn quilt draped the back of the couch. The dining room table was small but meticulously set with mismatched plates that somehow looked perfect together. They settled around the table, the food steaming before them. Evelyn watched as Naomi reached for her father's hand, then extended her other hand toward their guest. Understanding dawned, and Evelyn completed the circle, her manicured fingers linking with their work-worn ones. Dear Lord, Naomi's young voice filled the quiet room. Thank you for this food and for bringing Ms. Hart to our table. Please give her peace in her heart and strengthen her spirit. Help her remember she's not alone. Amen. Evelyn opened her eyes to find them unexpectedly damp. The simple, heartfelt prayer touched something deep inside her, a place that had been closed off for too long. In this moment, surrounded by the warmth of the Brooks kitchen and their unshaken faith, the headlines seemed far away. Naomi squeezed her hand once before letting go, offering a smile that held no pity, no judgment, just pure acceptance. And for the first time since the airport incident, Evelyn felt something unfamiliar settle in her chest. Hope. The church hall smelled of coffee and fresh-baked cookies. Morning light filtered through stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns across the worn linoleum floor. Evelyn smoothed her tailored blazer, feeling conspicuously overdressed among the casual gathering of veterans in their well-worn jeans and plaid shirts. Caleb placed a gentle hand on her elbow. You're safe here, he murmured. These folks understand more than you might think. Evelyn nodded stiffly, her shoulders tense as she followed him into the room. Metal chairs scraped against the floor as several veterans turned to look at her. Some faces showed curiosity, others wariness. Morning, everyone, Caleb called out with easy familiarity. This is Ms. Hart. She's visiting from Heartworks. A silver-haired man in a Marine's cap raised his coffee cup in greeting. Pull up a chair, ma'am. Coffee's hot and strong enough to wake the dead. Evelyn managed a small smile as Caleb guided her to an empty seat. The circle of veterans shifted to make room, their chairs forming a loose ring around a table laden with coffee urns and paper plates of cookies. Jim here was just telling us about that supply run in Kandahar, someone prompted. The Marine nodded, his weathered face growing serious. Yeah, well, funny thing about combat, it's 99% boredom punctuated by moments of sheer terror. This particular day, he paused, looking down at his cup. Sometimes I still hear those explosions, clear as day. Murmurs of understanding rippled through the group. Evelyn found herself leaning forward slightly, recognition flickering in her chest. What gets me is the unexpected stuff, a younger woman in an army sweatshirt added. Like, I can handle the 4th of July now because I'm prepared. But last week, a truck backfired outside the grocery store, and suddenly I was right back there. That's the thing about trauma, Caleb said quietly. It doesn't play by the rules. Evelyn's hands trembled slightly around her styrofoam cup. These people spoke about their struggles so openly, without shame. Their matter-of-fact acceptance stood in stark contrast to the whispers and judgment she'd faced in corporate boardrooms. An older man with a slight limp cleared his throat. Miss Hart, I wanted to thank you. My son's been out of work since the factory closed last year. This new plant, it means everything to families like ours. Evelyn blinked rapidly, surprised by the sudden emotion catching in her throat. Thank you for saying that. We take care of our own here, another veteran added. And anyone bringing good jobs to Maple Ridge is one of our own. Warmth spread through Evelyn's chest, loosening the tight knot of anxiety she'd carried since arriving. These people didn't care about corporate politics or viral photos. They saw her as someone trying to make a difference. The conversation flowed naturally after that. Stories of service and sacrifice, of coming home and building new lives. Evelyn found herself sharing bits of her own experience. Not the details of her trauma, but the challenge of facing each day with courage. It's like my old sergeant used to say, the Marine offered. The bravest thing isn't never being scared. It's being scared and doing what needs doing anyway. Heads nodded around the circle, Evelyn felt tears pricking at her eyes, touched by the simple wisdom and unexpected acceptance. As the morning drew to a close, people began gathering their things. Several veterans stopped to shake Evelyn's hand, offering words of encouragement and support. The atmosphere had shifted from wary to warm, and Evelyn felt something inside her shift too, a small crack in the walls she'd built so carefully. They were nearly to the door when Marge Ellison's voice cut through the air. The diner owner stood by the coffee station, her lips pressed into a thin line as she muttered, "Not sure she belongs here." Evelyn's spine stiffened instantly, the morning's warmth evaporating. Beside her, Caleb's jaw clenched, but before he could speak, the Marine in the cap stepped forward. "Everyone belongs here, Marge," he said firmly. "That's the whole point." The church basement buzzed with activity as a dozen women arranged squares of fabric across long folding tables. Sunlight streamed through ground-level windows, illuminating patches of blue, green, and warm earth tones. The soft whir of sewing machines mixed with gentle chatter and occasional laughter. Evelyn lingered near the doorway, her designer heels feeling out of place on the concrete floor. She watched as Naomi expertly sorted through fabric swatches, her young face bright with purpose. "Come on in, dear," called Martha, the eldest of the church quilters. Her silver hair caught the light as she beckoned with weathered hands. "We don't bite, though Betty's pins might if you're not careful." A ripple of warm laughter moved through the group. Betty, a round-faced woman in her 60s, held up her hands in mock surrender, several pins glinting between her fingers. Naomi bounced over to Evelyn, taking her hand. "I saved you a spot next to me. Dad says you've never quilted before, but that's okay. I just learned last summer." Evelyn allowed herself to be led to a chair, noting how different this felt from board meetings where she commanded attention. Here, she was the novice. "I'm afraid I might mess it up," she admitted quietly to Naomi. "That's the beauty of quilting," said Sarah, a former nurse with kind eyes. "Every mistake becomes part of the pattern. Sometimes the unexpected turns make the most beautiful designs." The women showed Evelyn how to choose complementary fabrics and cut them into precise squares. Her usually steady hands trembled slightly as she picked up the scissors. But Naomi's patient guidance helped her find her rhythm. "Each quilt will have the worker's name," Naomi explained, showing Evelyn her sketch. "And we're adding symbols that mean something to them, like Dad's has a medical cross for his service and a music note for me." Evelyn's fingers traced the careful stitches of a sample square. "It's personal," she said softly. "Not just a welcome gift, but a story." "That's right," Martha nodded, threading a needle with practiced ease. "When folks come back to work, they need more than just a job. They need to know they're seen, known." As the afternoon progressed, Evelyn found herself relaxing into the gentle routine. The repetitive motion of needle and thread had an almost meditative quality. She noticed her breathing had slowed, matching the peaceful rhythm of the work. From his spot by the door where he'd been quietly watching, Caleb observed the transformation. The sharp lines of tension in Evelyn's shoulders had softened. When Naomi showed her a particularly clever pattern combination, Evelyn's laugh rang out, natural and unguarded. "She fits right in," Betty murmured to Caleb, gathering scraps into her sewing basket. "Who'd have thought the big city CEO would take to quilting like a duck to water?" Caleb smiled, watching Evelyn lean in close as Martha demonstrated a special stitch. "Sometimes people surprise you," he said quietly, "when you give them the chance to be more than their title." The afternoon light began to fade, casting long shadows across the basement floor. As the women packed up their supplies, Evelyn helped fold the unfinished quilts with careful hands. "Same time next week?" Martha asked, touching Evelyn's arm gently. "We'd love to have you back." Evelyn looked around the room, at the scattered pins glinting like stars, at Naomi humming as she wound thread, at the simple fellowship of women who had welcomed her without judgment. "I'd like that," she said, and meant it. Later that night, in the quiet of her hotel room, Evelyn ran her fingers over the small square she'd completed. The stitches weren't perfect, but they were honest. She thought about the workers who would receive these quilts, each one carrying the care and acceptance she'd felt today. In the stillness, she whispered to herself, "Maybe I can belong here." The words hung in the air like a fragile hope, delicate but real. For the first time since arriving in Maple Ridge, Evelyn felt the possibility of putting down roots in this small town that was slowly working its way into her heart. Morning sunlight glinted off steel beams at the proposed Heartworks construction site. Evelyn stepped out of Caleb's truck, smoothing her navy blazer. A group of workers in hard hats gathered near the temporary office trailers, their expressions guarded. The sudden screech of metal on metal made Evelyn's shoulders tense. A crane swung overhead, carrying materials. Her breath caught as memories threatened to surface. The screech of tires, shattering glass, harsh voices in the night. "Focus on my voice," Caleb murmured, stepping closer. "Remember our routine. 5 things you can see." Evelyn's hands trembled slightly as she forced herself to look around. The crane, yellow hard hats, blueprint sheets, your brown boots, the morning sun. Good, 4 things you can touch. She reached out, fingers brushing different textures. The fabric of my sleeve, the cool morning air, the gravel under my feet, the clipboard in my hand. By the time they finished the exercise, her breathing had steadied. The workers pretended not to notice, but their faces had softened slightly. One man, wearing a veteran's pin on his jacket, gave her a subtle nod of understanding. Inside the trailer, Evelyn spread blueprints across a folding table. "We're looking at converting this wing into office space," she explained to the foreman. "But something's been on my mind since yesterday's quilting circle." Caleb leaned against the wall, arms crossed, listening. "What if we dedicated part of this space to something more?" Evelyn's voice grew stronger. "A center for veterans and their families. On-site counseling, support groups, job training." The foreman, Ted Wilson, according to his name tag, raised his eyebrows. "That's different from what we usually see from corporate." "Different can be good," Caleb spoke up. "How many vets do we have working construction here already?" "About a quarter of the crew," Ted replied, "including me." Evelyn pulled out a fresh sheet of paper. "Tell me what you'd need. What would have helped you when you first came home?" For the next hour, ideas flowed. Caleb contributed his medical expertise, describing how proper support could prevent burnout. Ted shared stories of fellow veterans struggling to find work that understood their needs. Evelyn's pen flew across the page. Flexible schedules for VA appointments, quiet rooms for decompression, training programs that recognized military experience, family counseling services. "We could partner with local veteran organizations," Caleb suggested. "Create a pipeline for hiring, and extend it beyond veterans," Evelyn added. "Second chance, hiring for anyone who needs a fresh start. The whole community benefits when we invest in healing." Ted studied the growing list. This could actually work. "But the board—" "Let me worry about the board," Evelyn said firmly. "This matters more than quarterly profits." They spent another hour refining the proposal. Workers drifted in and out, adding suggestions. The tension in the room gradually dissolved into purposeful energy. By early afternoon, they had a solid framework. Evelyn's usually pristine blazer was slightly dusty from construction site tours, but her eyes shone with determination. The drive back was quiet, both lost in thought. Maple Ridge's Main Street rolled past, shop windows decorated for the upcoming county fair. Evelyn found herself studying Caleb's profile as he drove. The quiet strength in his jawline, the gentle way he handled the steering wheel, the subtle smile lines around his eyes. She realized something had shifted during their planning session. His steady presence wasn't just keeping her panic at bay anymore. It was helping her rebuild something deeper, her sense of purpose, her belief that broken things could be made whole again. Caleb caught her looking and gave her a small smile. "Penny, for your thoughts?" "I was just thinking," she said softly, "about how sometimes the best healing comes from helping others heal too." He nodded, understanding in his eyes. "That's been my experience, both as a medic and after." He didn't finish the sentence, but she knew he was thinking of his late wife. They pulled up to her hotel, but neither moved to get out right away. The autumn breeze carried the scent of fallen leaves through the open windows. "Thank you," Evelyn said finally. "Not just for today, but for showing me what real strength looks like. It's not about never breaking. It's about knowing how to put the pieces back together." Caleb's hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel, touched by her words. "You're doing the putting back together yourself. I'm just here to hand you the tools when you need them." She smiled, gathering her papers. His calm presence had become more than just a shield against her triggers. It was becoming a foundation she could build on. A quiet place where healing felt possible. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the Maple Ridge County Fair as families strolled between colorful booths and rides. Sweet scents of cotton candy and caramel corn drifted through the air. Evelyn stood near the vintage carousel, watching children climb onto painted horses as calliope music filled the air. "Please, Miss Hart." Naomi's eyes sparkled with excitement as she gestured to the carousel. "Just one ride?" Evelyn hesitated, smoothing her silk blouse. The idea of climbing onto a wooden horse in her business attire seemed undignified, but Naomi's earnest smile reminded her of the young girl who'd once applied for that scholarship years ago. "I suppose one ride wouldn't hurt," Evelyn conceded, her lips curving into a small smile. Caleb watched from nearby, arms crossed and eyes warm. "Go on. No one's judging here." Evelyn carefully stepped onto the platform, accepting Naomi's helping hand. She chose a white horse with a flowing golden mane, while Naomi mounted a black stallion beside her. The teenager's face glowed with joy as the ride began to move. Round and round they went, the world beyond the carousel becoming a blur of colors and lights. Evelyn found herself relaxing, even laughing as Naomi made silly faces at her. The evening breeze carried the scent of summer flowers, and for a moment, she felt weightless and free. Boom! The unexpected firework burst overhead, shattering the peaceful moment. Evelyn's body went rigid, her knuckles white as she gripped the brass pole. Her chest tightened as memories threatened to overwhelm her. Glass breaking, screams in the dark. Easy now. Caleb was there instantly as the carousel slowed to a stop. His steady hands helped her down, his voice low and calm. "I've got you. Remember our routine?" But before she could answer, another explosion rocked the sky. Evelyn's breath came in short gasps. "This way." Caleb guided her firmly but gently, one hand at the small of her back. Naomi hurried alongside them as they made their way to a large white tent set up near the fairground's edge. Inside, rows of metal chairs faced a small stage where the church choir was gathering for their evening performance. "Naomi, would you?" Caleb didn't need to finish the question. His daughter nodded, understanding immediately. She squeezed Evelyn's hand before joining her choir mates on stage. The first clear notes of "Amazing Grace" rose above the continued boom of fireworks. Evelyn focused on Naomi's voice, sweet and pure, using it as an anchor just as Caleb had taught her. His hand found hers, warm and strong, his thumb tracing gentle circles on her palm. "5 things you can see," he whispered their familiar routine. Evelyn's voice trembled slightly. "The choir robes, white tent canvas, wooden cross, paper programs." Naomi's smile. "4 things you can touch. Metal chair. Your hand." She squeezed his fingers. "My silk blouse. Cool air from the fans." With each element of their grounding exercise, Evelyn's breathing steadied. The fireworks continued outside, but they felt more distant now, less threatening. Naomi's voice soared with the hymn, joined by her fellow choir members in perfect harmony. When the song ended, Evelyn surprised herself by standing. "I want to try something." Caleb's eyebrows rose slightly, but he nodded, keeping hold of her hand as they walked to the tent's entrance. Together, they stepped outside. The night sky erupted in a cascade of silver and gold. Evelyn flinched but didn't retreat. Caleb's solid presence beside her gave her strength as she tilted her head back to watch. The sparks rained down like falling stars, beautiful rather than threatening. "You're doing great," Caleb murmured, his voice full of quiet pride. String lights twinkled overhead, creating a warm glow across the fairground. From somewhere nearby, a band began playing a slow country ballad. Couples swayed together on a makeshift dance floor. Caleb turned to face her, still holding her hand. "May I have this dance?" Evelyn hesitated only a moment before stepping into his arms. They moved together slowly, her head coming to rest against his shoulder. His cologne mixed with the scent of summer air, and she could feel the steady beat of his heart. More fireworks painted the sky, but Evelyn barely noticed them now. All she felt was the gentle sway of their bodies, the warmth of Caleb's embrace, and a profound sense of peace she hadn't known in years. In this moment, everything felt right. The small town, the fair, the music, and most of all, the man whose arms held her safe. The band played on as they danced beneath the stars and string lights. 2 people who had found something unexpected in each other. Evelyn's lips curved into a genuine smile, matching the one she saw in Caleb's eyes when she looked up at him. For now, There were no board votes, no prejudices, no painful memories, just this perfect moment of connection and joy. The morning sun streamed through the curtains of Evelyn's hotel room. She sat at the small desk, still wearing her outfit from last night's fair, a gentle smile playing on her lips as she remembered dancing with Caleb under the twinkling lights. Her peaceful moment shattered when Tasha burst through the door, her usual professional composure completely gone. "Evelyn, we have a situation." She thrust her tablet forward, her hand shaking. "This just started circulating an hour ago." Evelyn's stomach dropped as she watched the video. The footage showed her, clearly agitated, jabbing her finger at a worker in Heartworks coveralls. The man cowered as she supposedly berated him about production quotas. Her voice rang harsh and cruel. "If you can't handle basic tasks, maybe you don't belong here at all." "That never happened," Evelyn whispered, her hands gripping the desk edge. "I haven't even visited that facility yet." Tasha paced the room, her heels clicking against the hardwood floor. "It's spreading fast. Pierce's people are already calling it a disturbing pattern of instability." She ran her fingers through her short hair. First the airport incident, now this. A knock at the door made them both jump. Caleb entered with Naomi trailing behind him. Concern etched on their faces. "We saw it," he said quietly. Naomi stepped forward, her young face intense. "That's Mr. Thompson in the video. He works with my Uncle Jim at the hardware store. He's never even been to a Heartworks facility." Evelyn's head snapped up. "Are you sure?" "Positive." Naomi pulled out her phone, scrolling quickly. "Look, here's a picture from last week's church picnic. He's wearing the same shirt as in the video, but he works at Thompson's Hardware. Has for 20 years. Tasha grabbed the phone, studying the image. "This could help us prove it's fake." She began typing furiously on her own device. "I'm calling in our digital forensics team." But the damage was spreading. Evelyn's phone buzzed constantly with notifications. Local news outlets were picking up the story. Social media exploded with speculation about her character. Even some of the veterans who had welcomed her at coffee hour were posting doubtful comments. "How could they do this?" Evelyn's voice trembled. "The editing is seamless. Deep fake technology," Tasha growled. "They probably used footage from your other facility tours and mapped it onto this setup." She looked up from her tablet. "Pierce has friends in high places with expensive toys." Caleb moved closer to Evelyn's chair, his steady presence grounding her. "Mr. Thompson is a good man. If we ask him to make a statement—" "Already on it," Tasha interrupted, holding up her phone. "Jim's bringing him by in an hour." They gathered in the hotel's small conference room. Mr. Thompson, a weathered man in his 60s, twisted his baseball cap in his hands. "Ma'am, I've never met you before today, but that video's causing my phone to blow up. People asking if you really treated me that bad. Would you be willing to make a public statement?" Tasha asked, setting up her camera. Mr. Thompson nodded firmly. "It ain't right, what they're doing to you. I've worked at the hardware store since '99. Never set foot in any factory." He looked directly at Evelyn. "My nephew's hoping to work at your new plant. Says you're bringing hope back to Maple Ridge. I won't let them smear you like this." Despite Mr. Thompson's heartfelt testimony, doubt continued to spread. Local Facebook groups filled with heated debates. The town seemed to split into factions, those who defended Evelyn and those who saw the video as confirmation of their worst suspicions about the big city CEO. By afternoon, Tasha's team had identified clear markers of digital manipulation. But the technical explanation didn't capture public attention like the emotional punch of the fake video had. Evelyn stood at the window, watching people point at the hotel as they walked past. Some took photos. She felt exposed, vulnerable, like the night of the home invasion that had triggered her PTSD. Her hands started to tremble. Caleb noticed immediately. "Remember your breathing," he said softly. "In for 4, hold for 4. She followed his guidance, but fear still gripped her chest. What if this was just the beginning? What else might Pierce fabricate? "The board meeting is in 3 weeks, she said quietly. "Pierce doesn't need the video to be proven real. He just needs enough doubt to justify that no-confidence vote." Naomi, who had been quietly working on her homework in the corner, spoke up. "But we know the truth, and the truth has to matter." Evelyn turned from the window to face Caleb, her eyes filled with fear. What if they believe it? The vulnerability in her voice made his heart ache. He wanted to reach for her hand, to promise that everything would be okay. But they both knew the fight ahead wouldn't be easy. The truth might matter, but sometimes lies traveled faster than facts could catch up. Mr. Thompson's testimony and the forensic evidence might not be enough to undo the damage. The video had tapped into exactly what some people wanted to believe about Evelyn, that she was unstable, unkind, unworthy of trust. The same prejudices that had followed her throughout her career were now being weaponized against her, pixel by pixel. Evelyn saw her reflection in the window glass, a woman who had fought her way to the top of her industry, who had survived trauma and discrimination, who had finally started to feel at home in this small town. Now all of that teetered on the edge, threatened by a carefully crafted lie. She met Caleb's gaze in the reflection, searching his eyes for the steady strength she had come to rely on. The question hung between them, heavy with all its implications. What if they believe it? The morning newspaper landed on Caleb's kitchen table with a dull thud. The headline glared up at him. Questions arise about CEO's protector. Local man's tragic past revealed. Caleb's hands trembled as he read the article detailing that terrible night 2 years ago when his wife Sarah died. The words blurred before his eyes. The article painted a stark picture. Sarah Brooks, experiencing severe abdominal pain, rushed to the ER, staff dismissing her concerns. Hours of waiting while she grew worse. By the time they finally took her seriously, it was too late. The article heavily implied that Caleb, as a medic, should have done more. Naomi came downstairs, backpack slung over one shoulder. She froze when she saw her father's face. "Dad, what's wrong?" Before he could answer, his phone buzzed. A text from his mother-in-law. "How dare you put yourself in the spotlight like this? After what happened to Sarah, we're contacting our lawyer about Naomi." The room spun. Caleb gripped the edge of the table, his knuckles white. Sarah's parents had never forgiven him, convinced he should have fought harder with the hospital staff. Now they were using his job with Evelyn as ammunition. "Dad?" Naomi's voice cracked. "Go to school, sweetheart. Everything's okay." But his voice betrayed him. Naomi grabbed the paper instead. Her face paled as she read. "This isn't fair. They're twisting what happened to Mom." The phone rang. Tasha's name flashed on the screen. Caleb answered, listening as she explained how Pierce had orchestrated the story's release. Social media was already ablaze with speculation about Caleb's mental state after his wife's death. "They're saying you're unstable," Tasha said gently. "That you're projecting your guilt onto Evelyn, trying to save her because you couldn't save Sarah." Caleb's throat tightened. "My wife died because of medical bias, not my failure to act. We know that, but Pierce is spinning it, and now there's talk of a custody challenge?" "Sarah's parents," Caleb managed. They always blamed." He couldn't finish. After hanging up, he found Naomi still standing there, tears streaming down her face. "They can't take me away from you. No one's taking you anywhere." But fear gripped his heart. He'd fought so hard to give Naomi stability after Sarah died. Now it was unraveling. The doorbell rang. Evelyn stood on the porch, holding a copy of the newspaper. Her eyes were fierce with concern. "Naomi, could you give us a minute?" Once Naomi retreated upstairs, Caleb's carefully maintained composure crumbled. He sank onto the couch, head in his hands. "I should have known Pierce would dig this up. I should have protected Naomi better." "This isn't your fault," Evelyn said firmly, sitting beside him. "Isn't it?" His voice was raw. "I was a combat medic. I saved lives under fire. But I couldn't save my own wife from prejudice in an ER. And now I've put my daughter at risk because I tried to help you. Caleb, look at me." Evelyn's voice was gentle but insistent. He raised his head, meeting her gaze. She saw the pain he usually kept hidden, the guilt, the anger, the fear of failing Naomi like he believed he'd failed Sarah. "Your wife's death was a tragedy caused by systemic bias," Evelyn said. "The same kind of bias Pierce is weaponizing against both of us now. You didn't fail her. The system failed her. Her parents don't see it that way. They'll use this job, use you to argue, I'm not providing a stable environment for Naomi." His hands clenched. "Maybe they're right. Maybe I am broken." "No." Evelyn's voice was fierce. She took his hand, her grip warm and steady. "Your scars don't make you weak. They make you real." Caleb stared at their joined hands, feeling the slight tremor in hers, evidence of her own battles. Yet here she was, standing with him as he faced his demons, just as he'd stood with her through hers. A sob caught in his throat. For the first time since Sarah died, he let himself break down in front of someone else. Evelyn held his hand tighter, anchoring him as he'd so often anchored her. They sat in understanding silence, two wounded healers, finding strength in each other's scars. The morning sun cast long shadows through the Heartworks warehouse windows as Evelyn walked beside the plant foreman. Her heels clicked against the concrete floor, echoing in the vast space. Caleb followed a few steps behind, his watchful presence both comforting and necessary today. As you can see, Miss Hart, we've already updated the loading bay configuration according to your specifications, the foreman explained, gesturing to the newly installed equipment. Camera crews from local news stations tracked their movement, their lenses focused on capturing every detail of this high-profile walkthrough. Clayton Pierce stood among them, his polished smile never reaching his eyes. Evelyn nodded professionally, maintaining her composure. The improvements look excellent. This will significantly improve our workflow efficiency. A piercing screech cut through the air. The fire alarm system erupted without warning, its harsh wail bouncing off metal walls and concrete floors. The sound sliced through Evelyn's carefully maintained control like a knife. Her breath caught. The world tilted. Shattered glass. Alarms blaring. The home invasion. Can't breathe. Can't move. The warehouse dissolved around her, replaced by fractured memories of that terrible night. Her legs wouldn't work. Her chest constricted. She was trapped again, frozen in place as danger closed in. Caleb moved instantly, but Pierce stepped between them. "Let's give our CEO some space," he announced loudly, making sure the cameras caught every moment of Evelyn's distress. The foreman scrambled to silence the malfunctioning system, but the damage was done. Camera lights flashed. Reporters pressed closer. Through the fog of panic, Evelyn dimly registered their hungry expressions. "Miss Hart?" Someone thrust a microphone toward her face. "Can you comment on what's happening?" "Can't breathe. Can't think." Her vision tunneled. The warehouse lights seemed to strobe. She couldn't find Caleb in the crowd of faces. She couldn't find anything familiar to ground herself. "Ladies and gentlemen," Pierce's voice cut through the chaos, smooth as oil. "I believe we need to call an emergency board meeting. Clearly, the stress of this position has become too much for Ms. Hart to handle." The alarm finally fell silent, but Evelyn's ears still rang. She forced herself to take one breath, then another, using the techniques Caleb had taught her. But it was too late. The damage was done. Hours later, she sat in the emergency board meeting, her hands folded in her lap to hide their trembling. The boardroom's sleek walls seemed to close in as Pierce stood to address the assembly. "While we all respect Ms. Hart's contributions to Heartworks," he said, his voice dripping with false concern, "today's incident, combined with recent events, raises serious questions about her fitness to lead at this critical time." Evelyn's throat tightened. She wanted to stand up, to fight back, to remind them of her years of successful leadership. But the words wouldn't come. "I move for an immediate temporary suspension," Pierce continued, pending a full evaluation of Ms. Hart's capability to serve as CEO. The vote was swift and brutal. Hands raised around the table, faces carefully avoiding her gaze. Only 2 board members voted against the motion. "The motion passes," Pierce announced with practiced solemnity. "Ms. Hart will step down effective immediately, pending evaluation." The drive home was silent. Caleb's truck hummed along the familiar roads, while evening shadows lengthened across the dashboard. Neither of them spoke. What was there to say? Evelyn stared out the window, her reflection ghostly in the glass. Everything she'd built, everything she'd fought for, suspended with a single vote. The plant's future hung in the balance. Jobs that would have transformed lives now balanced on a knife's edge. Caleb's phone buzzed. A text from his lawyer about Naomi's custody case. His jaw tightened as he read it at a stoplight. The silence between them grew heavier with unspoken words. They both knew what this meant. Caleb couldn't risk losing Naomi. Evelyn couldn't ask him to. Their tentative connection, the warmth they'd found in each other's company, it all had to end. The truck pulled up to Evelyn's hotel. Neither moved to get out. The engine ticked as it cooled, counting down their final moments together. "I'm sorry," Caleb finally said, his voice rough with emotion. Evelyn nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She opened the door and stepped out into the evening air, her heels crunching on the gravel parking lot. She didn't look back as she walked away. She couldn't bear to see the pain in Caleb's eyes, pain that matched the crushing weight in her own chest. The hotel door clicked shut behind her with quiet finality. Moonlight filtered through the stained glass windows of Maple Ridge Community Church, casting colorful shadows across the empty pews. Evelyn sat alone in the third row, her normally perfect posture crumpled. Her designer blazer lay discarded beside her, and her eyes were red-rimmed from crying. The day's events played on repeat in her mind. The shrieking alarm, her body freezing, the cameras capturing every second of her vulnerability. Pierce's smug face as he called for the emergency vote. The board members' pitying looks as she stepped down temporarily. And worst of all, the resignation in Caleb's eyes when they parted ways, both knowing they had to protect what little they had left. The hollow space echoed with her shaky breaths. Here, in the darkness, she didn't have to pretend anymore. No cameras, no board members, no expectations. Just her and her broken pieces. Soft footsteps approached from the side aisle. Pastor Lydia appeared, her silver hair catching the moonlight. She carried 2 steaming mugs of tea, the scent of chamomile wafting through the air. "I thought I might find you here," Pastor Lydia said softly, settling into the pew beside Evelyn. She offered one of the mugs. "Sometimes the quietest places speak the loudest to our hearts." Evelyn wrapped her trembling fingers around the warm ceramic. "I've lost everything," she whispered. "My company, my reputation, She couldn't finish the sentence. Saying Caleb's name hurt too much. Pastor Lydia reached into her worn leather Bible, pulling out a small bookmark. "You know, there's a verse that's carried me through many dark nights, 2 Corinthians 12:9. His strength is made perfect in weakness." Evelyn gave a bitter laugh. "Weakness is what got me here. If I'd been stronger—" "No," Pastor Lydia interrupted gently. "Weakness didn't get you here. Fear did. Fear of being seen. Fear of being judged. But what if your struggles aren't a liability? What if they're the very thing that makes you uniquely qualified to help others?" The words hung in the air between them. Evelyn took a sip of tea, letting its warmth spread through her chest. "I've watched you these past weeks," Pastor Lydia continued. "I've seen how the veterans respond to you, how you understand their hypervigilance, because you live it too, how your plans for the Veterans Families Initiative came from a place of genuine empathy." Across town, in the modest Brooks home, Caleb sat on the edge of Naomi's bed. His daughter's eyes were fierce, despite the tears tracking down her cheeks. "It's not fair," Naomi insisted, clutching her pillow. "Miss Hart was making things better. The jobs, the counseling program. It would have helped so many families like ours." Caleb ran a tired hand through his hair. "Sometimes life isn't fair, sweetheart. We have to think about keeping you safe, keeping our family together." "But we are family," Naomi's voice cracked. "All of us. You, me, Miss Hart, we fit together. And now you're both just giving up? It's complicated." "No, it's not." Naomi jumped up, grabbing her notebook from her desk. "You taught me that standing up for what's right matters more than being scared. That's why Mom loved you. That's why." She swallowed hard. "That's why Miss Hart loves you too." Caleb's chest tightened at his daughter's words. Naomi flipped open her notebook, uncapping a pen with determination. "If no one else will tell the truth, I will," she declared, starting to write. "About Dad's service. About how he helps people heal. About Miss Hart's kindness when no one's watching." Back in the church, Pastor Lydia placed a gentle hand on Evelyn's shoulder. "The world doesn't need another perfect CEO, dear. It needs leaders who understand brokenness, who can show others that healing is possible." Evelyn's gaze drifted to the towering stained glass window above the altar. The moonlight transformed the broken pieces of colored glass into something beautiful, each fragment essential to the whole picture. "Lord," she whispered, her voice barely audible in the vast space. "What now?" The words hung in the still air of the sanctuary, a prayer as raw as it was honest. Pastor Lydia squeezed her shoulder, and together they sat in the gentle silence, watching the moonlight paint stories of grace across the floor. The early morning sun streamed through the Brookses' kitchen window, casting a warm glow on the worn oak table. Naomi sat between her father and Evelyn, clutching several sheets of notebook paper covered in her neat handwriting. The remains of a simple breakfast toast crumbs and half-empty coffee mugs scattered across the check tablecloth. "I stayed up most of the night writing this," Naomi said, smoothing the pages with slightly trembling hands. I wanted to get every word right. Caleb reached over and squeezed her shoulder. You don't have to do this, sweetheart. Yes, I do. Naomi's voice was quiet but determined. She cleared her throat and began to read. My name is Naomi Brooks. I'm 16 years old, and I want to tell you about my father, Caleb Brooks, and Ms. Evelyn Hart. Not the stories you've heard in the news or on social media, but the truth I've seen with my own eyes. My dad served as an Army medic for 15 years. He saved countless lives in war zones, but his real heroism happened when he came home. When we lost my mom, he didn't break. He got up every morning, made my lunch, braided my hair, even though his hands shook sometimes. He taught me that being strong doesn't mean not feeling pain. It means choosing to help others even when you're hurting. Caleb's coffee mug trembled slightly. He set it down, and Evelyn noticed the moisture gathering in his eyes. Naomi continued reading. When Miss Hart came to our town, people were quick to judge. They saw her stumble at the airport and called her weak. But I saw something different. I saw someone who faced her fears every single day to build something good for our community. The same woman who once funded my STEM program scholarship now sits at our kitchen table, helping design programs for veterans' families. Evelyn's breath caught in her throat. She hadn't known Naomi would include that detail. My father and Miss Hart both carry invisible wounds. Dad from war, Miss Hart from trauma. But when they're together, they show what real strength looks like. It's not about never falling, it's about helping each other back up. I've watched them create something beautiful here in Maple Ridge. A chance for healing, for work with dignity, for second chances. The kitchen fell silent, except for the gentle ticking of the wall clock and the distant chirping of morning birds. Caleb wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, not even trying to hide his tears anymore. You know what? Naomi looked up from her letter. This needs to be heard by more than just us. The board needs to hear it. The whole town needs to hear it. Evelyn leaned forward, her business mind engaging despite her emotional state. A town hall meeting, she said slowly. We could live stream it to the Heartworks board members. Caleb shifted uncomfortably in his chair, speaking publicly about personal matters. Dad, Naomi turned to face him. You always taught me to stand up for what's right. This is right. Tasha, who had been quietly listening from the doorway, stepped into the kitchen. I can arrange it. The community center has the technology we need. We could have it ready by tomorrow evening. Caleb looked down at his hands, strong hands that had stemmed bleeding in combat zones, that had held his wife as she died, that had steadied Evelyn during her moments of panic. Finally, he nodded. Okay, he said softly. If sharing our story might help others understand, I'll speak. We'll need to be strategic, Tasha said, already tapping on her phone. Naomi should speak first. Her youth and sincerity will set the tone. Then veterans who've worked with both of you, maybe even some of the skeptics who've changed their minds. Like Marge from the diner, Naomi suggested. She's been different since she saw Dad and Miss Hart at the fair. Evelyn had been quiet, listening. Now she reached across the table and placed her hand over Naomi's, which still rested on the letter. Their fingers intertwined, young and old, hope and experience, innocence and wisdom. You may save us all, Evelyn said softly, her voice thick with emotion. Naomi squeezed her hand. We'll save each other. That's what family does. The word family hung in the air, unexpected but somehow right. Caleb looked between his daughter and Evelyn, seeing the connection that had grown between them. The morning sun caught the tears on his cheeks, turning them to gold. Tasha's phone buzzed with incoming messages as she began coordinating the event. I'll contact the board members. They need to see this in real time, see the real people behind the headlines. I should revise the letter a bit, Naomi said, pulling her pages close. Make it even stronger. It's already perfect, Caleb said, finding his voice. It's honest. That's what matters. They sat together in the sunlit kitchen, the remains of breakfast forgotten as Naomi read through her letter once more. Each word carried the weight of truth, each sentence a bridge between hurt and healing. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but in this moment, they had found something precious, the courage to tell their story together. The old church hall buzzed with nervous energy as townspeople filed in, filling the wooden pews and folding chairs. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, and a laptop perched on a rickety stand faced the podium, ready to live stream the proceedings to the Heartworks board members. Evelyn sat rigid in the front row, her hands clasped tightly in her lap to hide their trembling. She wore her CEO armor, a crisp navy suit and pearl earrings, but her eyes betrayed her fear. Caleb settled beside her, his steady presence a silent comfort. Naomi sat on his other side, her letter smoothed carefully on her knee. Pastor Lydia stepped up to the microphone. "We're gathered here tonight because sometimes truth needs witnesses. Sometimes healing happens in community." She nodded to Naomi. "Let's begin with the voice of youth, often the clearest voice of all." Naomi walked to the podium, her steps echoing in the hushed room. She took a deep breath and unfolded her paper. "My name is Naomi Brooks," she began, her clear voice carrying to every corner. "I want to tell you about my dad, Caleb Brooks, and about Miss Evelyn Hart. Some of you think you know their story from photos and videos, but you don't know what I've seen." She squared her shoulders. "My dad served as an army medic. He saved lives in war zones while bullets flew around him. But his real courage? That's in how he gets up every morning after losing my mom, makes my lunch, and teaches other veterans how to breathe when the memories get too loud." Caleb's eyes grew wet. Evelyn reached across and squeezed his arm. "And Ms. Hart," Naomi continued, "before I knew her, she funded a scholarship program that helped girls like me dream of becoming engineers. Now I know her as someone who sits with our church ladies, stitching welcome quilts for future workers, someone who listens to veterans' stories and plans to help their families." The room was completely still now, every eye on the teenage girl speaking truth to power. "They say she's unfit because she has PTSD. They say my dad is unstable because he couldn't save my mom from a biased emergency room. But I say they're both heroes. Heroes who keep trying, keep serving, keep loving, even when it hurts." Naomi's voice cracked slightly. "If you want to judge them by their actions. Judge them by how they help others heal." She stepped back from the podium to scattered applause that quickly grew stronger. Pastor Lydia squeezed her shoulder as she returned to her seat. Next came the veterans. Old Jim Murphy, who'd served in Vietnam, stood up with his cane. "I've watched Caleb Brooks teach breathing exercises to men twice his age, never asking for credit. And Ms. Hart? She listens to us with respect. That veterans initiative she's planning? That's real understanding, not just corporate talk." More veterans stood, sharing stories of how Caleb had helped them through dark nights, how Evelyn's project meant hope for their children. Each testimony built on the last, creating a wall of truth against the lies. Then Marge Ellison rose slowly from her seat. Her usual sharp edges softened. She gripped the pew in front of her. "I need to say something," she announced, her voice wavering. "When Miss Hart first came to town, I wasn't kind. I whispered things, made judgments based on nothing but prejudice and fear." She turned to face Evelyn directly. "I was wrong, dead wrong. You've shown nothing but grace and determination to help our community. I'm sorry, and I'm ashamed it took me this long to say it publicly." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Marge Ellison never admitted being wrong about anything. Her words carried weight. Tasha stood next, tablet in hand. "And now for the facts," she said crisply. She connected her device to the projector, and documents filled the screen. Financial records showing payments from shell companies tied to Clayton Pierce. Timestamps proving the viral video was doctored. Email chains revealing the coordinated smear campaign. She advanced through slides methodically. "Mr. Pierce didn't count on small-town solidarity. He didn't expect people to stand up and tell the truth, but that's exactly what's happening." The livestream chat exploded with comments. Board members watching online began posting messages of support. "Stand with Evelyn" started trending. Within minutes, news alerts pinged on phones throughout the hall. Clayton Pierce had resigned, effective immediately. The board announced an emergency meeting to reinstate Evelyn. Evelyn's hand found Caleb's in the midst of the growing celebration, their fingers intertwined as tension melted from her shoulders. She looked at him with eyes bright with unshed tears, a small smile playing at her lips. Together they watched as their community, their people, stood united against lies and fear, choosing truth and healing instead. Pastor Lydia raised her hands for quiet. "Let's remember this moment," she said softly. "Remember how light always overcomes darkness, how truth rises, and how love wins." The setting sun streamed through the stained glass windows, painting rainbow colors across the gathered faces, faces now bright with victory and hope. In that sacred space, Surrounded by supporters both present and virtual, Evelyn and Caleb held fast to each other's hands, anchored in the turning tide. Morning sunlight streamed through Evelyn's hotel room windows, painting golden stripes across the cream carpet. She stood at the window, watching the small town of Maple Ridge come to life. The local diner's neon sign flickered off as the breakfast crowd began trickling in. A delivery truck rumbled past, heading toward Main Street. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Tasha's name flashed on the screen. "Turn on your laptop now," Tasha said, her voice trembling with excitement. Emergency board meeting just ended. Evelyn's hand shook slightly as she opened her computer. The email sat bold in her inbox. Board resolution announcement, immediate effect. She scanned the formal language, her breath catching. Clayton Pierce had resigned, effective immediately. The board had reversed her suspension by unanimous vote. A soft knock at her door made her look up. Caleb stood in the doorway, still in his morning running clothes, concern etched on his face. "Just heard the news. You okay?" Evelyn gestured for him to come in, sinking into the armchair by the window. "They want me back. Full reinstatement." Her voice was quiet, thoughtful. "That's good news, isn't it?" Caleb pulled up the desk chair, leaning forward with his elbows on his knees. His presence, as always, helped ground her. "Is it?" Evelyn stood, pacing the length of the room. "All these years, I've been fighting to prove myself, to hold on to that CEO title. But these past weeks in Maple Ridge..." She paused, touching the small quilt square pinned to her bulletin board. Her first attempt at joining the Church Ladies Project. "You've seen another way," Caleb finished softly. "Yes." Evelyn turned to face him. "I've seen what real healing looks like. Not just covering up wounds, but actually letting them breathe and mend." Her phone buzzed again, the board chairman requesting an immediate video call to discuss her return. Evelyn silenced it. "I keep thinking about that Veterans Families Initiative we designed," she continued. "About Naomi's face when she talked about that STEM scholarship. About Pastor Lydia's words on using our scars to help others." Caleb stayed quiet, but his eyes were warm with understanding. "The board wants everything to go back to normal," Evelyn said, her voice growing stronger. "But I don't want normal anymore. I want better." She sat back down, pulling out her tablet and opening a blank document. Her fingers flew across the screen as she outlined her thoughts. Caleb watched, offering occasional suggestions as she worked through her vision. 2 hours later, Evelyn finally accepted the board's video call. She sat straight-backed at the desk, Caleb's reassuring presence just off camera. "Ms. Hart," the chairman began, "we're prepared to announce your full reinstatement this afternoon. The PR team has drafted—" "I have a counter-proposal," Evelyn interrupted, her voice clear and steady. She shared her screen, showing the document she'd prepared. "I'm declining reinstatement as CEO." Gasps and murmurs filled the video feed. "Instead," she continued, "I'm proposing the creation of the Heartworks Foundation. As executive chair, I would oversee corporate social responsibility initiatives, workplace wellness programs, and community integration projects, starting with our Maple Ridge facility." She outlined her vision, expanding the Veterans Families Initiative nationwide, implementing trauma-informed workplace policies, creating scholarship and training programs. Her voice grew passionate as she described using her own experience to reshape corporate culture. "We have an opportunity here," she concluded, "not to paper over what happened, but to transform it into something meaningful, to show that vulnerability can be a strength." The board members sat in stunned silence. Then, slowly, heads began nodding. "You're certain about stepping down as CEO?" the chairman asked. "I'm not stepping down," Evelyn corrected firmly. "I'm stepping up to a different calling." She glanced at Caleb, drawing strength from his proud smile. "Sometimes the best way forward isn't the path you planned." The chairman cleared his throat. "We'll need to review the details, but the foundation idea has merit, especially with the current public sentiment. Would you be willing to stay on as interim CEO while we transition?" "I have someone in mind for CEO," Evelyn said. "Tasha's been ready for years. She knows the company inside and out, and she's proven her integrity these past weeks." More discussion followed. Budgets, timelines, press releases. Through it all, Evelyn remained calm, her voice never wavering. When the call ended, she sat back with a deep breath. "You okay?" Caleb asked quietly. "I haven't felt this okay in years," she admitted, surprising herself with the truth of it. It's like I've been holding my breath, trying to prove I belonged in that office. But maybe I was meant for something bigger than just running a company. Caleb reached across the desk, taking her hand. You're going to change lives, Evelyn. You already have. She smiled at him, squeezing his fingers. I'm not going back the same way I came, she whispered, and I wouldn't want to. The Heartworks boardroom buzzed with anticipation. Dark wood panels lined the walls, and morning light filtered through tall windows. Board members shifted in their leather chairs, their faces a mix of concern and curiosity as they waited for Evelyn to speak. Caleb stood quietly at the back of the room, his steady presence giving her strength. She took a deep breath, remembering their conversation from earlier that morning. I know what I need to do, she had told him over coffee at Marge's diner. It's not about going back. It's about moving forward. Now, standing before the board in her charcoal suit, Evelyn's voice rang clear and strong. I appreciate the board's vote of confidence, she began. But I will not be resuming my role as CEO. Murmurs rippled through the room. She held up her hand, continuing with quiet authority. Instead, I propose establishing the Heartworks Foundation, dedicated to supporting veterans and their families through employment, counseling, and community integration. She clicked through her presentation, showing the plans she and Caleb had developed. The foundation will partner with our manufacturing sites, starting with Maple Ridge, to create a model for inclusive workplace practices. We'll provide on-site counseling, second-chance hiring programs, and family support services. The board chairman leaned forward. And your role in this? I would serve as executive chair of the foundation, working alongside our new CEO to ensure its success. Evelyn's gaze swept the room. My experience with PTSD has taught me that healing happens in community. It's time we brought that wisdom into our corporate culture. After 2 hours of discussion and deliberation, the vote was unanimous. The Maple Ridge plant would proceed with full funding for the Veterans Families Initiative. The Heartworks Foundation would become reality. When Evelyn stepped out of the boardroom, Caleb was waiting. His eyes held pride and something deeper. You did it, he said softly. We did it, she corrected him. The news spread quickly through Maple Ridge. By afternoon, Main Street was decorated with welcome banners for Heartworks. The church ladies had hung their first completed quilt in the diner's window, a beautiful pattern of blues and greens with Welcome Home stitched in gold thread. At the town square celebration, Pastor Lydia offered a blessing. Marge served free pie to everyone. Veterans gathered around Caleb, clapping him on the back and sharing quiet words of thanks. Naomi's choir sang Amazing Grace, their young voices carrying hope across the crowd. Evelyn stood slightly apart, watching it all with misty eyes. A small hand slipped into hers. Naomi, holding out a tiny box. Dad wanted you to have this, she whispered. Inside was a delicate sunflower pin, its golden petals catching the light. Caleb appeared beside them, his expression tender. To remind you to always turn toward the light, he said. As the celebration continued around them, Caleb gestured toward the river path. Want to take a walk? They strolled together, leaving the cheerful noise behind. The river flowed peacefully, its surface glittering in the late afternoon sun. Without hesitation, Evelyn's hand found Caleb's, their fingers intertwining naturally. You know, she said, I used to think being strong meant never showing weakness. And now I know it means having the courage to be real, to heal, to help others heal too. She squeezed his hand. Thank you for showing me that. They walked on in comfortable silence, the river murmuring beside them, their joined hands a promise of more tomorrows to come. Morning sunlight streamed through the tall windows of Courtroom B at the Maple Ridge County Courthouse. The polished wooden benches creaked as people settled in, their whispers echoing off the high ceiling. Caleb Brooks sat at the defendant's table, his shoulders straight, but his hands clasped tightly in his lap. His military bearing couldn't quite mask the worry in his eyes. Naomi sat beside him, her dark hair neatly braided, wearing her Sunday best, a blue dress that matched her father's tie. She kept glancing at the empty jury box, then back at her grandparents who sat 3 rows behind them, their faces set in grim determination. In the back row, Evelyn Hart watched silently. She'd traded her usual power suits for a simple gray dress, trying to blend in rather than draw attention. Her heart ached watching Caleb and Naomi. knowing how much they had already lost. Judge Marion Reynolds studied the papers before her, her reading glasses perched on the edge of her nose. The morning light caught the silver in her hair as she looked up at the assembled crowd. "We're here today to review the custody arrangement for Naomi Brooks," Judge Reynolds began, her voice carrying clearly through the hushed courtroom. "I've received quite a stack of testimonies from the community regarding Mr. Brooks' fitness as a parent." Caleb's jaw tightened. Naomi reached for his hand. "I have statements here from Pastor Lydia Chen, the Veterans Support Group, Naomi's teachers, and dozens of townspeople." The judge adjusted her glasses. "Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, I understand your concerns about your granddaughter's welfare. Losing your daughter was tragic, and your desire to protect Naomi is natural." Naomi's grandparents nodded stiffly. "However," Judge Reynolds continued, "the evidence before me shows a father who has created a stable, loving home despite his own grief. Mr. Brooks has maintained steady employment, ensured Naomi's education and extracurricular activities, and by all accounts, provided excellent emotional support." She lifted a particular paper. "I'm especially moved by Naomi's choir director's statement about how Mr. Brooks never missed a single performance, even driving straight from work, still in his uniform to make it on time." Tears welled in Naomi's eyes. Caleb squeezed her hand. "Furthermore," the judge went on, "recent events have demonstrated Mr. Brooks's exceptional character. When faced with public pressure and potential career consequences, he consistently prioritized his daughter's well-being. His work with Ms. Hart and the Heartworks Veterans Initiative shows his commitment to helping others while maintaining appropriate boundaries." Judge Reynolds removed her glasses, looking directly at the Wilsons. "I understand you're concerned about Mr. Brooks taking on additional responsibilities that might affect Naomi. But the testimony I've received suggests his new role has actually strengthened their family bond and created more opportunities for Naomi's future." Evelyn watched as Caleb's shoulders relaxed slightly. She could see the tension draining from his face. "The purpose of family court is to ensure the best interests of the child," Judge Reynolds stated firmly. "And in this case, the evidence is overwhelming. Naomi is thriving under her father's care. She maintains excellent grades, participates in community activities, and has shown remarkable resilience and maturity." The judge shuffled her papers together decisively. "Therefore, I am dismissing this custody review. The current arrangement will stand, with Mr. Brooks retaining full custody. Mr. and Mrs. Wilson, you may continue your standard visitation schedule as previously established." Naomi didn't wait for the judge's gavel to fall. She threw her arms around her father's neck, burying her face in his shoulder. Caleb held her tight, his eyes closed, relief written across his features. "I love you, Dad." Naomi's voice carried clearly through the quiet courtroom. "I love you too, sweetheart," Caleb murmured, his voice rough with emotion. The Wilsons rose slowly from their seats. Mrs. Wilson dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief while Mr. Wilson stood stiffly, his hand on his wife's shoulder. They looked at their granddaughter wrapped in her father's embrace, and something in their expressions softened. As people began filing out of the courtroom, Evelyn remained in her seat, watching the scene before her. Caleb was helping Naomi gather her things, his movements gentle and practiced, the comfortable routine of a father caring for his child. She saw how Naomi leaned into him, secure in the knowledge that she was safe, that she belonged. A tear slipped down Evelyn's cheek before she could catch it. She quickly wiped it away, but the ache in her chest remained. It wasn't just happiness for Caleb and Naomi that moved her. It was longing. Watching them, she felt the weight of her own solitude, the years she'd spent building walls instead of bridges. The courtroom had nearly emptied when Naomi spotted her. The girl's face lit up, and she tugged on her father's sleeve, pointing toward the back row. Caleb turned, meeting Evelyn's eyes with a warm smile that made her heart skip. But Evelyn stayed where she was, giving them their moment. Family was precious. She knew that now more than ever. And while her heart yearned for connection, for the kind of love she saw between father and daughter, she understood that some moments were meant to be witnessed rather than joined. Another tear escaped as she watched them walk toward the courtroom doors, Naomi chattering excitedly while Caleb listened with patient attention. The morning sun caught them in its glow, turning them into a perfect picture of what family could be, what she had always wished for but never dared to reach for, until now. Maple Ridge dawned clear and bright on graduation day. The old textile warehouse, now transformed into Heartworks Training Center, buzzed with excitement. Fresh paint gleamed on the walls, and morning light streamed through newly installed skylights. Rows of chairs faced a small stage where 30 handmade quilts lay carefully folded, each one a testament to countless hours of community dedication. Evelyn Hart stood in the wings, smoothing her navy blazer with trembling fingers. She touched the small silver pendant at her throat, a gift from Naomi last week, and took a steadying breath. The familiar exercise Caleb had taught her weeks ago still worked its magic. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. "Ms. Hart?" Naomi appeared at her elbow, practically glowing in her choir dress. "The first guests are arriving. Mom would have loved this, you know." Evelyn's heart squeezed at the girl's candor. "Your mother would be so proud of you, sweetheart." She reached out and straightened Naomi's name tag, fighting back tears. "Thank you for helping organize all this." Through the doors came the training program's first graduates, former soldiers, their spouses, local workers who'd never dreamed of white-collar opportunities. Many bore visible scars of their service. Others carried invisible wounds like Evelyn's own. They filed in with military precision, backs straight despite their obvious nervousness. Pastor Lydia stepped up to the podium, her warm voice filling the space. "Welcome to Heartworks' first workforce development graduation. These quilts represent more than just job training. They represent healing, hope, and home." From her vantage point, Evelyn watched Caleb slip in through a side door. He wore his dress, blues, medals gleaming, and though he tried to be inconspicuous, heads turned, his presence steadied her, as it had since that first day at the airport. The ceremony began. One by one, graduates approached the stage. Evelyn and Naomi worked in tandem, the teenager reading names while Evelyn presented each carefully folded quilt. Every blanket told a story. Some squares featured service insignias, others held family photos transferred onto fabric. Many contained messages of encouragement, stitched in careful cursive. "James Martinez," Naomi announced, her voice clear and strong. A former Marine with a prosthetic leg made his way up the stairs. Evelyn lifted his quilt, revealing the sunflower square she'd sewn herself. Her first attempt at quilting, guided by patient church ladies. The yellow petals weren't quite even, but she'd stitched with love, thinking of how James had spoken about his grandmother's garden during training. "The sunflower always turns toward light," Evelyn said softly as she handed him the quilt. "Just as you have." James's eyes welled up as he traced the stitches with work-roughened fingers. A young widow came next, then a veteran with severe PTSD who'd originally doubted he could handle office work. Each quilt represented not just a job, but a chance at renewal. Evelyn felt her own healing reflected in their faces. The slow, steady process of learning to trust again, to hope again. Naomi beamed with each presentation, occasionally adding personal touches to her announcements. "Mrs. Chen tutored me in algebra last summer," she'd say. Or, "Mr. Washington's daughters inquire with me." Her natural warmth turned what could have been a formal ceremony into something intimate and profound. From the corner of her eye, Evelyn caught glimpses of Caleb throughout the ceremony. He stood at parade rest, hands clasped behind his back, but his expression was soft as he watched his daughter shine. When their eyes met briefly, his smile reached all the way to his eyes. The quilting group sat in the front row. Marge from the diner, who'd become one of their strongest supporters. Rachel from the church, who'd taught Evelyn her first stitches. And a dozen other women who'd poured their hearts into this project. They nodded in satisfaction as each quilt was presented, occasionally dabbing at their eyes with handkerchiefs. Near the end of the ceremony, a surprise graduate approached the stage. Tasha, Evelyn's PR chief, who'd been secretly taking the training courses alongside her regular duties. She'd fallen in love with the town and decided to transfer permanently to the Maple Ridge office. When Evelyn handed her a quilt featuring a communications theme, both women had to pause to compose themselves. As the last graduate returned to their seat, Naomi stepped forward with an unscripted addition. "Before we close, I'd like to share something." She pulled out a small box. "The graduates made this for you, Miss Hart." Inside lay a delicate sunflower pin, crafted by one of the veterans who did metalwork therapy. Naomi carefully fastened it to Evelyn's lapel as she whispered, "You helped all of us turn toward the light." The room burst into applause. Evelyn found herself laughing through tears, pulled into an impromptu hug by Naomi. The teenager's joy was infectious, her natural ability to bridge hearts reminiscent of her father's healing presence. The formal ceremony concluded, but people lingered, admiring quilts and sharing stories. Children darted between chairs, while veterans swapped business cards and made lunch plans. The warehouse had transformed into something warm and alive. No longer just a building, but a community center. Naomi flitted through the crowd like a happy butterfly, collecting hugs and compliments. She paused to explain quilt patterns to curious onlookers, her voice carrying clearly across the room as she detailed the meaning behind each design. Her pride in the project, in her father's role, in Evelyn's transformation of Heartworks, shone in every word. The evening air wrapped around them like a warm blanket as they sat on the Brooks wraparound porch. Paper plates balanced on their laps held Naomi's famous mac and cheese, still steaming in the twilight. Fireflies began their nightly dance across the lawn, tiny lights blinking like nature's own fairy lights. Evelyn sat in the old wooden rocker, its familiar creak now a comfort rather than an irritation. She watched Naomi chase a particularly bold firefly, the teenager's laughter floating back to them on the gentle breeze. "She hasn't laughed like that in ages," Caleb said softly, his eyes following his daughter's movements. He sat in the matching rocker beside Evelyn, close enough that their elbows nearly touched. "She's remarkable," Evelyn replied, setting her empty plate aside. "You've raised her well, Caleb." He shook his head, a slight smile playing at his lips. "Some days I wonder if she's the one raising me." The crickets began their evening chorus, joining the peaceful symphony of rural life. A car passed on the distant road, its headlights briefly illuminating the yard before fading away. "I used to be scared of quiet moments like this," Evelyn admitted, her fingers tracing patterns on the armrest. "The silence. It left too much room for memories." Caleb turned to look at her, his eyes gentle in the fading light. "And now?" "Now," she paused, considering. "Now I'm learning that peace doesn't have to mean vulnerability. That maybe it's okay to let the quiet in." Naomi's voice carried from the yard. "Dad! Evelyn! Look how many I caught!" She held up a mason jar dotted with glowing spots. "Don't keep them too long, honey," Caleb called back. "They need their freedom too." Evelyn watched as Naomi nodded seriously, already unscrewing the lid to release her temporary captives. The firefly spiraled upward, creating a magical moment of swirling light. "You know," Caleb said quietly, "I've been thinking about freedom too. About how sometimes what we think keeps us safe actually keeps us trapped." Evelyn's breath caught slightly. "Like what?" "Like fear." He turned in his rocker to face her more fully. "After Sarah died, I built walls. Told myself it was to protect Naomi, but really, I was protecting myself." A firefly landed on the porch, railing between them, its gentle glow punctuating the moment. "I understand that," Evelyn whispered. "After the break-in, I threw myself into work, built my own fortress of spreadsheets and meetings, convinced myself that control meant safety. And now," Caleb's voice was tender, "now I'm learning that safety isn't about walls. It's about—" She gestured to the scene before them, Naomi dancing with fireflies, the peaceful porch, the stars beginning to peek through the darkening sky. "It's about this. Community. Connection." Caleb's hand found hers in the growing darkness, his touch warm and steady. "You've changed this town, Evelyn. Changed us. Changed me." She squeezed his fingers gently. "I think we changed each other." The moon rose slowly over the trees, casting silver light across the yard. Naomi had settled on the porch steps, her head tilted back to watch the stars appear one by one. "You know what scares me most now?" Caleb's voice was barely above a whisper. "What?" "Hope." He took a deep breath. "For the longest time I thought hope was dangerous, that if I didn't expect anything, I couldn't be disappointed. But then you walked into our lives and—" He paused, gathering his thoughts. "You've given me hope again. Hope that maybe there's more to life than just getting through each day. That maybe there's room for joy, for—" He hesitated. "For love." Evelyn's heart thundered in her chest. She turned to face him fully, moonlight silvering his features. "Love scared me too," she admitted. "It felt like another vulnerability, another way to be hurt. And now?" His eyes searched hers. Now I'm starting to think that maybe love is the opposite of vulnerability. Maybe it's strength. Naomi's voice drifted up from the steps, humming softly. The same hymn she'd sung at the fair, the night Evelyn had first watched the fireworks without fear. Caleb's free hand reached up to brush a strand of hair from Evelyn's face. "You make me strong," he whispered. The moment stretched between them, full of possibility. Then, with the gentleness of a summer breeze, Caleb leaned forward. His lips met hers in a tender kiss, soft and sweet as a prayer. Evelyn's eyes fluttered closed as she leaned into his touch, feeling truly safe for the first time in years. When they finally parted, the fireflies still danced, the stars still shone, and Naomi still hummed her quiet song. But something had shifted, like the world had tilted slightly on its axis, aligning everything just right. Evelyn rested her forehead against Caleb's, their fingers still intertwined. Above them, the night sky sparkled with countless stars, bearing witness to a love born of healing, trust, and the courage to hope again. Monday morning found Evelyn at the Brooks kitchen table, her laptop open but forgotten, as she helped Naomi with her chemistry homework. Steam rose from her coffee mug, mingling with the scent of toast and jam. "So, if you balance this equation," Evelyn pointed to Naomi's notebook with her reading glasses perched on her nose. "See how the hydrogen atoms match up?" Naomi's face lit up with understanding. "Oh, like puzzle pieces." She scribbled the answer with renewed confidence while Caleb watched from the sink, his hands covered in dish soap suds. "Who knew we had a science tutor right under our roof?" he said with a warm smile. The phrase "under our roof" made Evelyn's heart skip. Over the past week, she'd found herself spending more and more time at the Brooks home, drawn to its warmth and simplicity. Her hotel room felt cold and empty in comparison. Tuesday afternoon brought choir practice at First Methodist. Evelyn sat in the back pew, responding to emails while Naomi's clear soprano soared above the other voices. Pastor Lydia settled beside her, offering a handful of peppermints. "You're becoming quite the choir mom," the pastor observed with a knowing smile. Evelyn accepted a mint, surprised to realize how natural it felt to be there. "The singing helps," she admitted. "It drowns out the noise in my head sometimes." "God works in mysterious ways," Pastor Lydia said softly. "Sometimes through teenage sopranos." Wednesday evening was the church potluck. Evelyn brought store-bought cookies, feeling slightly embarrassed, until Mrs. Henderson from the quilting circle took her arm. "Honey, we can't all be Martha Stewart," the older woman said with a wink. "Come help me serve the green bean casserole." Soon, Evelyn found herself wrapped in an apron, laughing with the kitchen ladies as they dished out comfort food to the long line of townspeople. Nobody mentioned board meetings or viral videos. Here, she was just Evelyn, the woman who couldn't cook but made excellent coffee. Thursday found her at Marge's diner for breakfast. The owner, who had once whispered doubts about Evelyn's presence, now saved her favorite booth by the window. "Your usual sugar?" Marge asked, coffee pot already tilted toward Evelyn's cup. "Caleb called ahead, said you had a big foundation meeting today." "He did." Evelyn felt warmth spread through her chest that had nothing to do with coffee. "That man looks after his people," Marge said with a meaningful look. "Always has." By Friday afternoon, Evelyn had learned the rhythms of small-town life. She knew which roads backed up at school pickup time, which church ladies made the best pies, and which veterans preferred their coffee black at the morning support group. She sat with Caleb on a park bench, watching Naomi practice soccer with her friends. The autumn air carried the scent of dried leaves and approaching rain. "Thank you," she said suddenly. Caleb turned to her, eyebrows raised. "For what?" "For showing me what community feels like, what family feels like." She wrapped her cardigan tighter around herself. "I forgot, somewhere between board meetings and quarterly reports." His hand found hers, warm and steady. "You always belonged here, Evelyn. You just needed to believe it." Saturday night's church dinner buzzed with activity. Evelyn helped set up folding tables while Naomi arranged centerpieces made from mason jars and wildflowers. The fellowship hall filled with the aroma of casseroles and fresh-baked rolls. "Ms. Hart," little Emma Wilson tugged at her sleeve. "Will you sit with us? Daddy says you know all about robots." Evelyn found herself surrounded by eager children, explaining basic engineering concepts between bites of chicken pot pie. Across the room, Caleb caught her eye and smiled. Later, as families began heading home, Pastor Lydia touched Evelyn's shoulder. "You've brought something special to our community, dear." Not just jobs, hope. Sunday dinner at the Brookses' home had become a tradition without anyone quite noticing when it happened. Evelyn set the table while Caleb carved the roast, moving around each other in the kitchen with comfortable familiarity. Naomi said grace, her young voice full of gratitude for family, friends, and Miss Evelyn being here with us. Evelyn blinked back unexpected tears. Looking across the table at Caleb's gentle eyes and Naomi's bright smile, Evelyn felt something shift in her heart. This was more than community, more than friendship. This was belonging. This was family. The thought didn't frighten her anymore. Instead, it felt like coming home after a very long journey. "Would you pass the potatoes?" Caleb asked, his voice pulling her from her thoughts. Evelyn handed him the bowl, their fingers brushing. The simple domesticity of the moment filled her with quiet joy. Here, in this modest home with these extraordinary people, she had found what all her success could never buy. A place where she could simply be herself, scars and all. The morning sun painted the sky in soft pinks and golds. As Evelyn's car pulled up to the Brooks driveway, she stepped out wearing a crisp navy blazer, her curls caught in the gentle breeze. Naomi bounded down the porch steps, camera bag bouncing against her hip. "Perfect morning for pictures," Naomi called out, her enthusiasm infectious. Caleb emerged from the house, carrying a wicker picnic basket. His eyes crinkled at the corners when he saw Evelyn. "Ready for a little adventure? As long as you're leading the way," Evelyn replied, falling into step beside him. They walked together down the quiet street, past white picket fences and gardens bursting with late summer blooms. The familiar route led them toward the outskirts of town, where paved roads gave way to well-worn dirt paths. "Dad discovered this spot years ago," Naomi explained, adjusting her camera strap. "Mom used to say it was like finding a piece of heaven." Evelyn noticed how Caleb's expression softened at the mention of his late wife. These days, the memories brought more peace than pain. She reached for his free hand, threading her fingers through his. The trail gradually steepened, winding through stands of maple trees. Morning dew still clung to the grass, making their shoes slightly damp. Birds called from the branches above, a cheerful symphony accompanying their climb. "Almost there," Caleb said, helping Evelyn over a fallen log. "Watch your step here." As they crested the hill, Evelyn gasped. Before them stretched a rolling meadow carpeted with wild sunflowers, their golden faces turned toward the rising sun. The flowers swayed gently in the breeze, creating waves of yellow against the blue sky. "It's breathtaking," Evelyn whispered, taking in the view. The city skyline sparkled in the distance, but here, surrounded by nature's beauty, corporate worries felt far away. Caleb spread a checkered blanket in a small clearing among the flowers. Naomi immediately began setting up her camera, testing angles and light settings with the expertise of a budding photographer. "I brought something for you," Caleb said, reaching into his pocket. In his palm lay a delicate silver pin shaped like a sunflower, its petals catching the morning light. Evelyn's eyes widened. "Caleb, it's beautiful." "May I?" he asked, gesturing to her lapel. When she nodded, he carefully pinned it to her blazer. His fingers brushed against the fabric, steady and sure, just as they had been that first day at the airport when he'd helped ground her during her panic attack. "Always turn toward the light," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "That's what these flowers do, what you've taught me to do again." Tears welled in Evelyn's eyes. Here was a man who had seen her at her most vulnerable, who had stood beside her through public scrutiny and private battles, who had shown her that healing wasn't weakness, but strength. "You were my light," she whispered, reaching up to touch his face. "You and Naomi both." Caleb drew her into his arms, holding her close. Evelyn pressed her face against his shoulder, breathing in the familiar scent of his cologne mixed with morning air. Tears of joy slipped down her cheeks, but she didn't try to hide them anymore. They stood together in the sunflower field, two people who had found healing in each other's broken places. The morning breeze rustled through the flowers, carrying the sweet scent of wild grass and possibility. "Perfect," Naomi called out, lowering her camera. "That's the shot right there." Evelyn laughed softly, remembering that first photo taken weeks ago at the airport, a moment of crisis captured by a stranger's lens. How different things were now. That picture had tried to show her weakness. This one captured her strength. In Caleb's arms, surrounded by sunflowers reaching toward the sky, Evelyn knew she was exactly where she belonged. The camera clicked again as Naomi captured another moment, preserving their joy in pixels and light. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the newly constructed Heartworks facility. Rows of white chairs filled the parking lot, now transformed into an outdoor auditorium. Handmade quilts draped over the backs of chairs added splashes of color to the scene. The air hummed with anticipation as community members filed in, greeting each other with warm smiles and excited chatter. Evelyn stood behind the podium, her fingers brushing the small sunflower pin on her lapel. She watched as Caleb and Naomi took their places beside her, their presence steadying her more than any breathing exercise ever could. The crowd settled, and Evelyn's gaze swept across familiar faces: Pastor Lydia, Marge from the diner, veterans from the coffee hour, and dozens of soon-to-be Heartworks employees. 6 weeks ago, Evelyn began, her voice clear and strong, I arrived in Maple Ridge as a CEO trying to hide her struggles. She paused, meeting understanding eyes in the audience. I thought vulnerability was weakness. I believed my PTSD made me less capable, less worthy. A gentle breeze rustled through the crowd, carrying the sweet scent of late summer flowers. Caleb stood tall beside her, his quiet strength radiating support. Naomi beamed from her other side, camera ready to capture this milestone moment. But this community taught me something profound, Evelyn continued, emotion coloring her words. You showed me that healing isn't weakness, it is the foundation of strength. Every stitch in these quilts, she gestured to the colorful displays, represents a story of overcoming. Every person here carries their own battle scars, visible or invisible. Heads nodded throughout the audience. A few veterans wiped away tears, their wives squeezing their hands. The church ladies who had sewn the quilts sat together, pride evident in their postures. When I first met Caleb Brooks, Evelyn's voice softened with affection, it was during a moment of crisis. He didn't see weakness in my struggle. He saw someone fighting to stand tall. She turned to smile at him, their shared memory of that airport meeting now transformed from shame into testimony. This facility isn't just about jobs, she declared, gaining momentum. It's about creating a space where healing is normal, where veterans can find purpose, where families can rebuild, where second chances aren't just promised, they're guaranteed. The crowd burst into applause. Naomi snapped photos, capturing the joy radiating from every face. Caleb's hand found Evelyn's, their fingers intertwining naturally, comfortably. Today, as we cut this ribbon, Evelyn held up the ceremonial scissors with her free hand. We're not just opening a building. We're opening our hearts to a new way of seeing strength through scars, transformed into stories of grace. The ribbon fell away in a clean cut, and cheers erupted. The local high school band struck up a triumphant march. Quilts waved like banners in the afternoon light as people rose to their feet, celebrating not just a new business, but a new understanding of healing. Church bells chimed in the distance as families began touring the facility. Children darted between adults, marveling at the modern machinery. Veterans gathered near the counseling center, already sharing stories and support. The quilting ladies proudly showed off the wall display where their handiwork would permanently hang. As the sun began its descent, casting golden light across the scene, Evelyn found herself drawn to the quiet of the Brooks' front porch. The familiar creak of the swing welcomed her as she sat down. Her professional heels finally slipped off. Caleb joined her, the swing's gentle motion matching the peaceful rhythm of the evening. The sounds of the celebration still carried on: the breeze, laughter, music, the hum of community. But here, in this moment, everything distilled to its essence. Caleb's arms settled around her shoulders, warm and secure. Evelyn leaned into him, feeling the last of her guards dissolve. I finally found home, she whispered, the truth of it settling deep in her bones. In your arms. The porch swing swayed gently, carrying them in its peaceful motion. Maple leaves danced in the evening breeze, and somewhere in the distance, a church bell tolled the hour. The sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, a fitting close to a day of new beginnings. Inside the house, they could hear Naomi reviewing her photos from the day, her excited voice carrying through the screen door as she shared her favorites with Pastor Lydia. The sounds of cars leaving the plant drifted up the hill, carrying with them the promise of tomorrow's fresh start. Evelyn nestled closer to Caleb, his steady heartbeat beneath her ear, reminding her of all the ways healing could feel like coming home. The golden hour light caught the sunflower pin on her lapel, making it shine like a beacon of hope, a small but powerful reminder that even in life's darkest moments, they would always turn toward the light. What would you do if you were in their place? Comment your answer below, and let's see how you'd rewrite the ending. If you enjoyed the story of Caleb Brooks, I handpicked the next story that you will enjoy. Please don't miss this one. Click here to watch it.